Mr Speaker, conservation is one of those areas that arouses a huge amount of passion and pride from all New Zealanders. And what is most disappointing about the debate that has just commenced is the total lack of passion or vision or support or understanding that the Minister demonstrated in her speech. That will be a big disappointment, as has this government's contribution to conservation over the last 2.5 years. Mr Speaker, this bill has been warmly welcomed by many groups around the country, and Labor is certainly going to support the progress of this bill to Select Committee. I'm disappointed that we're going to have such little time at Select Committee, as indicated by the Minister, to consider the concerns that have already been expressed publicly, and as with many legislative provisions, the devil is in the detail. If we don't get it right at Select Committee and report that back to the House, we're likely to cause problems. The rush, I understand, is to make sure that we have this provision enabled before the Rugby World Cup. Mr Speaker, I personally don't think that's a good enough reason to rush legislation and possibly get it wrong. As the Minister outlined, this is really an empowering provision so that local councils can determine areas where they say freedom camping is not allowed. That's quite a big step for New Zealand to take. We've often prided ourselves in our welcoming attitude to people that really want to get out and about and see the best of our country. We don't welcome people who pollute it. We don't welcome people who abuse the beauty that we are so proud of and destroy it for other people. So that provision is important to have that protection. Whether this is the right mechanism of doing it is certainly part of the debate that we're going to have. I'm not sure that I agree with the Minister that the instant fining regime is the most appropriate, and I do think that there will be more difficulty with enforcement than the Minister outlined. For example, if a freedom camper gets a fine and then gets in his car or her car and drives off to the airport to leave the country as previously planned, then what happens? Do we just say, well, that's bad luck? Well, I'm not sure that we do, because under the legislation it reads to me as if the vehicle owner has the responsibility, but that could be a rental company, and more likely than not it will be a rental company. Then what happens? Is the rental company then have the onus of passing on that fine that has been incurred unfairly, in my view, by Hertz? Does Hertz then have the responsibility of chasing that person around the other side of the world and getting that $200? That's a detail that will be quite important, particularly to rental car companies. Another concern I have is that there could be some relationship between motor camps and a council. The council are going to determine which are the zones that freedom camping is or isn't allowed. If there's some relationship between a camping ground and a council, the council may say, well, it's to our benefit to exclude freedom camping in a large part of that area for the benefit of the motor camp. That wouldn't be fair on freedom campers. They would be unfairly punished because of that relationship, and that's something that we also might need to protect against. Another area of concern that's been drawn to my attention through quite considerable publicity around this bill is the issue of trampers. It's very common in New Zealand for trampers to sleep the night at the start of the track or at the end of the track and then start their journey either on foot or by driving home. If that area is not allowed as a freedom camping area, then those trampers might have to stay some distance away and ruin what is a very important part of tramping tradition, being able to get to the start of the track the night before and then start very, very, very early in the morning on that walk. So those are areas, Mr Speaker, that I think deserve the rigour of attention, that I'm sure Chris Ockenvoll will guide very well through the Select Committee, which has developed a reputation, in my view, and a fair reputation of paying considerable attention to detail in legislation. Our deliberations today were significantly enhanced by the presence of Aaron Gilmore, who contributed very well, and it was fortunate that he was there, because otherwise we may well have been floundering on some of the detail, particularly in the local government provisions. It was extraordinarily helpful, and I do hope that he's able to sub on for some of the members as we consider this bill. Mr Speaker, this bill has arisen because of the government's desire, which I certainly support, the government's desire to ensure that precious areas of our country, areas where people want to go and visit, want to see, want to enjoy, are protected against anything which is unpleasant, anything which is damaged or destroyed by people who aren't as respectful as we would want them to be. We don't know if that happens a lot. We don't know if it is quite rare, but we do know that some councils have been particularly upset about it, and I know that other colleagues are going to add to that. Rural Women New Zealand is not a group that complains lightly. They have put on public record their concern about the damage to specific environments that is being done by Freedom Councils. The Mount Maunganui locals have complained of behaviour in their area, and I'm sure they weren't referring to Simon Bridges or any other local members of Parliament. No, they were in fact referring to freedom campers. Now, that's a magnificent part of the country, and I'm sure that Simon Bridges would want to make sure that it's protected as well. The same has happened in Queenstown. The same has happened in Picton. These are areas where we want to make sure that as we parade around the world, inviting people to come here, saying to people, our country is the best in the world, it is 100% pure New Zealand, that we want to be able to back that up. And when those people do come and visit, that we show them the pristine areas that we so enjoy. Mr Speaker, I do find it frustrating, though, that the Minister supports this sort of legislation, as she has done in her introductory speech, but at the same time has significantly undermined the ability of her own department, the Department of Conservation, to progress the very issues that this freedom camping bill is designed to protect. She's basically turned the Department of Conservation not into an organisation that is charged with protecting our waterways, protecting our land, enhancing it for the betterment of all New Zealanders and visitors to enjoy. She's handed it over to Minister Brownlee and said, have a look what's in our Schedule 4 National Park areas and see if there's anything worth mining there. The most precious parts of New Zealand. Let's have a little surgical mining, as the Prime Minister described it. I was just stunned that the Minister of Conservation was prepared to hand over that part of her portfolio, which should be the area she defends most, to something as outrageous as mining in those protected areas. Members of the public were outraged as well, and I was very proud that we had thousands and thousands of New Zealanders marching on the street saying we want to protect the most precious parts of our country. These are the parts of the country that we also want to protect from freedom campers in this legislation who are damaging it. But returning to the actions that the Minister has taken in terms of the Department of Conservation, they're now required to be a profit-making organisation. That isn't what the Department of Conservation was set up to do. It was designed to be the advocacy group, to be the lobby group, to be the brains behind the passion that New Zealanders feel about their most important areas. So it's a huge and negative step backwards that the Minister has led in her own portfolio. It's a big disappointment to many New Zealanders who care about our environment more than they care about anything else. I was surprised that the Minister didn't take the lead when this bill was originally publicised. In fact, it was the Minister for the Environment who took the lead in all the media. And I was quite surprised actually that the Minister of Conservation introduced the bill today. I thought perhaps it had been transferred for some reason to the Minister for the Environment, because all the publicity had Nick Smith's name attached to it rather than the Honourable Kate Wilkinson. And that is a puzzle, but I'm sure it's something that I'll spend more time discussing at the Select Committee and see if we can get to the bottom of this. And Mr Speaker, as I said, the principle of this legislation to protect our areas which are currently being damaged by freedom campers is supported by Labour. We will support this bill to the Select Committee. I want the concerns that I raised and others that I'm sure submitters raised addressed at that Select Committee process. I'm sorry that it's going to be so truncated because of the Rugby World Cup. I think our rights to enjoy our country are worth protecting.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Her time has expired.